All right. Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to our very semi-regular chat about all things Parkinson's. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis Phinney Foundation. And I'm here today with Kat Hill and Nancy Peate. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Good to see
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah, so glad that you were able to show up. So, for anybody watching, please throw any questions you might have in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'll answer whatever we can. Let me just make sure I don't have somebody else. Oh, hello from Des Moines, Iowa. That is fabulous. I wonder what happened here, but I'm going to put it up there anyway. It might be double duty. Yeah. Okay. So, Kat, I'd love to just start with you guys telling the room a little bit about yourselves and your life with Parkinson's. So, Kat, why don't you take it away?
All right. So, hi, everybody. I'm Kat Hill, and I am usually based out of Portland, Oregon, but I'm currently traveling around the country in an Airstream trailer with my husband, Ken, and our 9-pound Yorkshire Terrier, who is living his best life. His name is Baxter. I was diagnosed with YOPD in, I'm calling it February of 2015. And am, learning to navigate life in a tiny space. We kind of sold everything we owned and navigating life with Parkinson's and life on the road. And trying
to recently sold everything and started this journey, right?
Yeah, we sold our house. Actually, it never hit the market. Right at the top of the market last April. We moved into the Airstream in June, and then my husband stopped working in October. So, but we've been in the Airstream since June. So,
love it. For those people not super familiar with YOPD, can you just tell people a little bit about what that is? And
sure. So young onset Parkinson's disease, that's sort of the slang for young onset Parkinson's disease. There's currently not an international standard for what that means. It's generally accepted in the medical circles when you receive a diagnosis before the age of 50. It varies from country to country, but Nancy and I really subscribe to the premise that it's about stage of life when you're diagnosed. It's the idea of being diagnosed before you're retired, before you've raised your kids, before you're done with your earning days, because it really does impact socially differently for a young onset.
Right.
Nancy and I have been pals, and we wrote a book too. I got to mention that, right?
We're going to talk about that for sure.
I was born in Central California on a stormy day in 1966. I don't know how far back,
right? So yeah, with YOPD, and some will argue it's a totally different disease, and they treat it very, very differently, and symptoms are different. And I just had a really fabulous talk with Dr. Savika, and we're going to share that. But it's for those of you unfamiliar with it, it's really interesting, the research that's going on. The more attention is drawn to it, and why that's so important to have somebody, if you're lucky, that understands YOPD, because it does present very differently than maybe somebody who got a diagnosis and can't. One of the things we always have to say when we're talking about YOPD, it's like generally accepted under 50, but hey, if you get it at 60, but you, looking back, hindsight is like you actually have been experiencing symptoms since you were 40, well, that's young onset too, right? So there's a whole lot that really goes into it. But I just wanted to give people a quick little primer on it before we just move on with our millions of acronyms that we always say.
Yeah. Thank you, Mel, for that. Yeah. I didn't know how in depth or where, which angle we should tackle.
Yeah. So I'm going to get back to you and your work, because that's a really big piece of YOPD and why it is such a different experience for people. You left a full-time job, so we're going to get back to that. But Nancy, can you just do a little quick intro about who you are, where you are, and your experience?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I'm in Portland, Oregon. I was diagnosed in, I think, 2014, a little bit before CAT, but not very much. I was 58, so I don't fit within that traditional, I wasn't under 50, but I'd had my son late in life, so I was raising a teenager at home. I was still working full time. And I was really wanting to find other people that were in that same stage of life as I was. And I was working at the time I was a children's librarian, and I was doing lots of story times. And that's when I could see that something was going wrong, because I could see my reflection in one of the windows. And I thought, what is happening with my hand?
Oh.
And I didn't know who to ask. And I was really, it's fun to kind of compare myself to Kat, because Kat's taught me how to just have this openness about Parkinson's, where she'll see somebody she hasn't seen before. She'll say, hi, did you know I had Parkinson's? Or something maybe more subtle than that. But, and I was like, oh God, I don't want to let anybody know. Oh my goodness, it's a private thing for me. So it took me a while to realize that I could talk about it and get a lot of support.
Yeah, that's great. So speaking of support, let's talk a little bit about how you two met.
Yeah. Kat, you want to?
I'll take it.
Okay.
So Nancy and I have the same stories, that we get to share. So we try to take turns who gets to share it. Nancy and I both were really looking for community, and I knew a lot about Parkinson's. My dad had Parkinson's, but I hadn't known anybody like me who had Parkinson's that was younger, and nobody that was female actually in my life that had Parkinson's. And so I looked up a support group online, but didn't call ahead of time. And it was August, and I showed up. I was nervous. I came with my husband, and I had tried a couple other support groups, but hadn't really found the one that fit. So I showed up to this support group, and it was a really dark conference room, and it became fairly apparent. And then Nancy showed up. And then so we sat there kind of waiting for the support group to start, and realized that it wasn't going to be happening. So we did decide to stay and kind of shared our own stories and realized how much we had in common. We had teenagers at home. We both had demanding careers. I was practicing full-time as a nurse midwife, and was the director of a busy inner city hospital-based practice in Portland. Nancy worked at the downtown library, had a teenager at home. And we eventually formed our own support group and formed a young onset happy hour, because both of us were looking for messages of hope and inspiration, and how to navigate in a positive way a really challenging life event. And so right away we melded. Nancy's got the best dry wit you've ever hung out with. She makes
I was going to say that I still have the notebook where you wrote your phone number. You said, just give me a call.
That's so great.
And that's such a lesson to know about how to find support, as you give people your phone number.
Right.
People that you want to call you.
I think that story is fascinating for a couple of reasons. Number one is you'd gone to a bunch of support groups and it didn't work. What were the chances that you were like, oh no, I'm going to keep going out? So can you tell us a little bit about what didn't work about the first ones? And then, no name dropping or anything. And then why were you like, you know what, I'm going to this one now too? Because you weren't even diagnosed yet, right, Kat? Like, you hadn't even gotten an official diagnosis?
I didn't have an official diagnosis. I had a soft diagnosis with a progressing tremor and a lot of denial. that I was trying to work through, like any good healthcare provider.
Right.
Not me.
One of the ones I went to was at an assisted living center, and I didn't really feel like I was quite ready.
You're like, walk in, I'll walk right back
They
out.
were really, really nice, and I went just maybe twice, and I got really attached to people there, but it wasn't the kind of support I wanted.
Yeah.
And what I found was that there was a lot of good information out there, and a lot of really good people, but nobody
Really.
that felt like in my life stage. Nobody was everybody was talking about retirement and grandkids and travel and wonderful things, but that's not where my life was. My life was, how do I manage a chronic illness and work? If I can't work, how do I do that? How do I have income? How to talk to my kids about it? How can I hold on to some goals and some life and some positivity? Because that's how I'm wired. It's not that I didn't grieve about it. It's not that I didn't feel a huge blow and a huge sense of loss, but I needed something to hang on to that was a story that felt positive, maybe, that I could model my next steps after. And I wasn't finding that in the groups. And I think Nancy and we talk about that we found each other because we had to.
Yeah.
we had to find each other. And it was a propitious moment. And
very propitious.
And it has led to a really wonderful friendship, a really meaningful, what's the word? I can always count on Nance to pick up her phone, and we can relate so much to what we're going through. And our husbands have gotten to be friends. We've done some travel together. We've spoken internationally together, and now we've published a book together. I mean, who would have thunk?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I love, well, I want to dive into a little bit because you both had teenagers. So,
and we're still alive.
You made it. You made it. I'm still in it. I'm still right. I'm going, right.
Sending you love.
Yeah. So Nancy, first question, did you have Parkinson's in your family as well? Like, was there any sort of experience with it?
Not that I know of. In retrospect, I think about different people in my background and wonder, but there was just no Parkinson's that I know of.
So for both of you, and maybe Kat, starting with you, because you did have Parkinson's in your family, how did you talk to your kids about it? Like, how, I know they were, different ages. How old were each of them when you decided, and how long had you had the diagnosis before you talked to them about it?
So 2 of the 3 kids were still at home. One was in our downstairs apartment going to college, and the other was a junior in high school. I think I have that right. And our third child was living independently and doing AmeriCorps work. I told the kids, they knew something was up because I left work and didn't go back to work. I left with symptoms, a lot of anxiety symptoms and chest heaviness, and then my tremor came and stayed in my hand. And so it wasn't something that was easy for me to not, to navigate. So I just said, we're having it checked out. I don't think it's any big deal. It's probably something like thyroid, or I told them all the things I was telling myself. Because even though my dad had been diagnosed, he had been diagnosed in his mid-70s with Parkinson's. And he presented very differently than I did. He didn't have tremor. He had that slowness of movement, the bradykinesia, and was shuffling. And I was anxious, jittery, shaky, tremor, but also was perimenopausal and caring for my mom who had cancer and was living with us. So I had a really full life, a demanding life. I was up all night delivering babies, at least one night a week. And it was hard for me to sift out. So even though I was in denial, and that's a little embarrassing now looking back, there was a lot going on physically for me to sift out. In retrospect, like so many, I really think I had symptoms 4 to 7 years before I was diagnosed. So early in my 40s, late 30s, possibly, I was starting to have some anxiety, which was sort of that internal tremor. It wasn't until I started taking carbidopa levodopa regularly that feeling went completely away. And I realized, that's what I've been living with. So.
What about you, Nancy?
It's so interesting to me how different it presents, the Parkinson's presents, because Kat and I have really different symptoms in general, and yet I recognize my symptoms in her sometimes. So I don't have, mine's not tremor dominant, but I'm just, I have a lot of the slowness of movement. And what I first noticed that when I was doing that story time, when I could see my arm in the reflection, was it just wasn't tracking. One arm was up high and one was down low. And I thought, at the time, I thought, I need to stretch more. You search for just really some reasonable reason that something's going on. And I remember doing a lot of internet searches, which is one of the first things my neurologist said is stay away from the internet. So,
but Nancy's a reference librarian. Please.
Oh, stay away from research. There we go. But I kept doing these ridiculous searches like arm doesn't track. You don't get Parkinson's with that. You get nothing.
You're like an orthopedic. Maybe you have mobility issues, right? Or
right. So when the neurologist said this is Parkinson's, I thought, what? I was just really surprised. But you started this off by asking about teenagers and how old they were. I had I think 13 or 14-year-old. So he was going through all his own young man, but he was very mature about it when we talked to him. Pretty quickly, we sat down as a family on the couch and just very straightforward said, Mom's got Parkinson's. And he had questions like, how are you feeling? And what's that going to mean for you? And what do I need to do to help? He was a model of maturity, and since then he's just been straightforward and completely trustworthy. He'll say, how's that feeling for you? Or the place that we don't go very much is what my diagnosis might mean for him, and that's one that's not an easy conversation for me yet.
Right.
Mm-hmm. In general, I have in our family, I have asked my family and even formally emailed close friends and family saying that I want you to feel free to ask questions if you have questions. If I'm not sharing something in a way that makes sense to you, it's okay to ask, but I absolutely do not want every interaction we have to revolve around my health. That I work very hard in my day not to define myself by how my Parkinson's is. I can have a great day with lots of symptoms. I can have a lousy day with lots of symptoms, but I try not to base my entire existence around what my Parkinson's symptoms are doing. Mm-hmm. I choose, believe it or not, to not talk a lot about Parkinson's. Those of you that see me on the internet think, what? That's all she talks about. But truly, I really choose in my day-to-day life to try to ignore it as best I can while tending to regular medication regimes. And I think it takes increasing amounts of energy as the disease progresses to manage the disease, because it takes time and playing with medication cycles, going to appointments, managing symptoms. But I try very hard to find something positive to focus on in the day, even in the hardest days, because I think it's important to change our minds that way. My kids have picked up on that. I have a son with a chronic illness who has type 1 diabetes. And very early in our family, we learned that we didn't want him to define himself that way. So at 48, how could I lay on the couch for a year and feel sorry for myself? You know, it just wasn't, even though I may have wanted to.
Yeah. So that was actually going to be my next question, was that, did that come like immediate for you? Was that just, wow, really, really quick?
You know, I laid around for about 6 to 8 weeks. I was tired. That's partly why I laid around a lot.
Did you get medication as soon as you got your clinical diagnosis? Okay. So you were still.
I was offered medication and I chose to wait. I was worried about dyskinesias. In retrospect, I'm not sure that was the best choice. In retrospect, I think I might have benefited from medicine earlier. And but I did grieve it. You know, no matter what framework I had to operate in, I had to get there on my own heart. And I don't think, you know, Nancy and I talk about this in the book, that you can't get to authentic joy and happiness, I think, after a diagnosis, unless there's that sense of grieving. I think you have to be sad. However you do that, you have to work through it. And I think for me, it has allowed me, I think, to find real joy. And each step of the way, there's some loss and grief, you know, with Parkinson's. I'm needing more medicine. I'm needing to take more time. I need more doctor's appointments. There's a sense of loss that comes with that. And I think each time we have that loss, the more practice we have getting up out of what we call the rabbit hole, getting back up on our feet, the better our brain is at it. But we still feel it. We still feel it.
That story that Kat told about the first time we met at the support group, you know, it was a dark and kind of damp room because it rains a lot here in Portland, but we both cried quite a bit. We were both right in the thick of feeling a huge amount of grief and not knowing what to do with it. And to have somebody else that I could cry with and not have to
even
apologize.
Without a facilitator, even without a group leader.
We didn't have any exercises to do or anything. Very quickly, I think it was that group, I learned about the different exercise classes around the city and very quickly joined up with an exercise group, and Kat and I went together. And that was kind of the beginning of understanding what I was going to need for community.
What ones did you try out first? Were you somebody who exercised a lot in your life previous to this too?
I've gone to exercise classes for a great amount of my life. I would not say I'm athletic, but we went to boxing. So we had to get boxing gloves right away. And the first thing Kat did was paint purple polka dots on her boxing gloves. Mine were bright purple also. And we met lots of other people our age very quickly through that class. And I have a lot of admiration for the coach in that, the boxing coach.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really important thing. I mean, first of all, I'm struck, and I wish everybody could have this, you know, meet cute in a dark conference room with the exact person that you needed to meet at that time, and just have that buddy to walk this with. But I also, you know, love that you went and you found your people. And I think it's important for anybody just kind of watching and maybe scared to walk in the door. You know, they've heard about rock steady boxing or dance for PD or whatever it happens to be.
Ping
and
pong.
to walk in the door, ping pong, that, you know, chances of you finding somebody, you know, just having people who get you, right? Like they don't have to
Right.
get the same things, but it's really nice when you don't have a lot of explaining to do, right? And people understand that.
Yeah, and it's also makes a big difference. Nancy and I found really early. Nancy was still working. I left work right away and didn't go back, for which there was a lot of grief also. That took a long time for me to work through and process. But having a commitment to Nancy to go to exercise class made a big difference for me. She was still working, so we went to a 6:30 a.m. class, and we went 3 days a week, and then a fourth day was a women's workout that we went to also, and we were religious about it. Really, really religious. And if I was traveling, I would still go do a workout. I learned a good interval training workout that works. I still use it today. I've been using it at the resort we're staying in with the Airstream. You know, I do the same, 3-minute stations that we did in boxing. And I would say I worked out a lot. I was a swimmer sort of by, athlete wise, but the high intensity interval training really made a difference for me. And we did find our people there. And I think, again, talking about the book, we really have found like that is such a touch point for so many people, that community is so much more important than just, people you want to hang out with. It helps to keep us well. It helps to keep us invested. It helps to keep us caring about our lives even.
Right. So let's dig in. Let's just get to this book. Let's stop talking about it like it's not even here. All right. So let's see the cover.
Okay. Here's the cover.
There we go. Being well with chronic illness. And I threw the little thing in the chat. If you guys want to look for it, you can go to tinyurl.com/being well book. To order Kat and Nancy's book. So talk to us a little bit about, how did this come about? How did you guys write it? Give us the whole deal.
All right, you start that one, Nance.
Yeah, soon after we met is when the first World Parkinson's Congress happened in Portland. And we went to that and we're so inspired by so many different things. I talk about the photography. There was the display of faces of Parkinson's, and they were all people that looked really interesting to me. Anyway, we kind of got the idea that we wanted to present at the next one. I remember Kat kind of just whispered into my ear. She's like, next one, we're going to be up at the front presenting.
Love that.
So we prepared pretty extensively. We did a lot of talking and planning and researching, and then we presented to a lot of friends and family to say, what would you want to hear about if we were going to present something? Focus groups.
Yeah, we did focus group. We bribed people with wine and cheese and crackers. Can you come listen to us talk for an hour and see what you think, and try out our slide deck? And
maybe 6 of them.
I think so.
We were pretty serious, and then we were invited to come speak in the next Congress in Japan
in 2019. Go ahead, Nance.
Well, it was at Japan after we had presented. We were walking down the hall, maybe that day or the next day, and a woman was coming the opposite way, and she said, "Oh, shoot, I missed your talk." She said, "But it's okay. I'm just going to read your book." And there was kind of
our book.
Our book.
You're like, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Please hold for 4 years.
I think the rest of the time we would say, well, that's in the book. The book, of course, didn't exist anywhere at that point, but we came back, I think within a week or two, we were putting it down on paper, writing it.
So part of what what ended up happening is through our support group, Nance and I were both really wanting to focus on resilience and longevity. And we looked for messages in the literature and in speakers. And I think there was growing evidence for people with illness about how to live well, but we didn't find anything that spoke directly to us. And as women, for one thing, we're both women living with Parkinson's disease. And a lot of the literature out there was either super anecdotal or really research based. And we didn't find kind of a mesh of both. And we wanted to learn more for ourselves. And we figured if we started a project and started researching stuff that mattered to us and started writing about it, that would be a beautiful, fun experience for us, no matter what came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found was people liked it. People liked our stories. They related to the story. A woman in Japan wanted our book that we didn't have, and we wanted to keep working together. It brought us joy to work together. People ask us all the time, like, how did you write a book together? Thinking like that there was a lot of tiff and argument. Really, if we had a difference of opinion, we were always able to express it. And I don't think there was a single time that one of us wasn't comfortable meeting in the middle about a decision. And we learned a lot through the process. We learned a lot about ourselves and what worked and the tools that worked for us. And we loved to talk to other people who had journeys that were inspirational. And we feature somebody, one of those people in each chapter in our book. And yeah. So, Nance, do you want to talk about how we got it published?
First of all, I just want to make sure you saw this. Anise said, I have the book and it is awesome. Thank you for writing this.
Oh, thank you for reading it. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
About halfway through, or maybe further, there came a point when I thought, we have something here that's really interesting and special, and I can see it. There came a point where no longer were we just sort of writing about things that interested us. There was a message there that really made sense. And there were some things that Kat was talking about that I hadn't thought about before. And when I saw them kind of taking shape in the book, it mattered to me. It was things that helped me in my life as we were writing it, which is kind of wonderful. So we started trying to find a publisher, and pretty quickly we found a developmental editor, and that's in our boxing group. And she was so wonderful. She said, I just so believe in this book. I want to help. I want in to help with your project.
It's like an angel fell from the sky into our boxing group. And she had been supportive and talked to us at coffee afterwards. And she said, do you guys know like what I did, I do for a living?
What kind of work I do?
Yeah. And we're like, no, what do you do, Eve? Oh, I'm an editor for a major publishing house in Portland. We were like, wow.
That's a cool job.
Right?
Yeah.
And she carried us a long way that first winter when we weren't sure what we were doing. And Eve just kept saying, you have got to keep going on this. And we did. So at some point we started sending out queries to publishers and agents, and Eve was sort of helping us along. She was introducing us to people, and we were trying to find a fit. And I think we sent out, we think maybe around 15 queries. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever had this process, we say it's sort of like applying to college. You've got to write a long essay, and you've got to do your research, and you've got to
package it all up. For each one. Right? Everyone, it's not the same. You don't cut and paste. So we were like, okay, you do 2 this month, I'll do 2 this month. Who are we going to take? And yeah.
Right. And one day came when we had a message from Hatherley Press saying, let's talk.
Yeah.
That's a pretty wonderful day.
It was a pretty wonderful day. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we weren't sure. A lot of people hire agents to pitch a book, but Nancy and I didn't. We were trying to not invest a ton if we could avoid it. And we had also talked about self-publishing, which was a route that we think is valuable. It's wonderful though to have a publisher though who will take it and do all their magic. Like we're not professional book designers, and Hatherley Press has been just wonderful to work with. They let us give lots of creative input. The editing process was relatively painless because Nancy and I had been working together now, for 4 years through a pandemic, I might add. So, anyway, we just feel really lucky and blessed, and people are seeming to like the book and like the stories and feel like it's a nice balance of research and personal stories. And anyway, we're happy to still work together.
Yeah, right. Book number 2.
Yeah.
Um,
Never know.
Can you, I'm just curious, obviously we want everyone to read the book, but
Sure.
how do you define the wellness spiral? What is that? How can that help, people right now?
Okay, so we heard a speech at the World Parkinson Congress in Kyoto. The advocacy pyramid that Dr. Sonia Mather talked about and was developed by Dr. Sonia Mather and
Tom Isaacs.
The late Tom Isaacs.
Right.
And we related to a lot about that. And it sort of starts with diagnosis, and then you work your way up to being an advocate at the top of the pyramid. And we identified with a lot of the parts of that. And that was sort of a good leaping off point for us to develop our own model. And it's called the wellness spiral. And it's at the bottom is the tight little end of the tornado. And we call this the rabbit hole. And we personally have yet to meet a single human who doesn't know what down the rabbit hole means. And we realize that almost all of us have experienced some kind of major life event and know what down the rabbit hole means. And so we wanted to define ways to get to this really good stuff at the top that's really expansive and intentional. And we call that intentional wellness. And in the book, we take you through the steps about how to build some of those things to stay out of the rabbit hole and end up in intentional wellness. One of those big ones is finding community. Anybody that's tuned in today already knows that, right? Community is really important. And we talk about ways to have compassion for yourself. And until you have compassion for yourself, how hard it is to have true compassion for others.
Yeah.
And again, we aren't experts. We're experts at living with our own Parkinson's disease. So we tried to bring in some of the relevant research, how being grateful or having a gratitude journal can really change the way your brain wires things and what you're looking for in the day. We talk about, Nancy, you want to talk about neuroplasticity?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, first of all, I wanted a model that didn't have steps that you had to do in order, because it doesn't work that way.
You mean there's not an A to Z on living with Parkinson?
I'm so sorry.
Congratulations.
Money back guarantee.
Right.
30-day return. What is it? I don't know.
We wanted something really loose and open that was more like our experience, which is some days I have a lot of self-compassion, or I feel just on top of the world, and other days I'm back in the rabbit hole. And so we wanted something that you just kind of move around on rather than move up and finish. And I also wanted to brag that the spiral is an original watercolor that Kat did to show that we kind of liked it because it's a little bit messy and
perfect and messy.
Love it.
And all the good stuff's up at the top.
Talk about neuroplasticity. Okay, so I'm doing this backwards.
Right.
In the book. And on this side, you can see the arrow that goes up and down. So we're all, in any given day, we could be in all of these things. And we try to you all out there are all experts at your own lives. You all have tools that work for you, and probably tools that don't, that may be more self-destructive. We just tried to organize some of our ideas and support you looking at your own ideas in ways that can bring you wellness. And I like to say, if I have to check a box at the office, if I'm healthy or not healthy, I always check healthy. I'm exercising, I'm eating well, I'm living my best life out here on the road. Do I eat a hamburger? Sometimes I do. I admit it. But I really am focused on that healthy part. And if I look at the lens of my life thinking that I'm an unhealthy person, I've already lost my battle, right? And I don't like the term battle, but I've lost groundwork on viewing myself as healthy. Hope that made sense.
When we were researching some of the initial things that mattered about your diagnosis, neuroplasticity was something that we spent a lot of time trying to get our hands around. Of, can you really change your brain by the words you use and how you think and how you exercise? And they all kind of blend in together. And our exercise coach was having us do things where she would put up different colors, and we would have to yell out the color at the same time we were hitting something, and then the color would be written in a different, like yellow would be written in orange. And there's a lot of research that shows if you work your brain that way, you can actually make some difference in your health
and in your brain health. Yeah.
I think about a lot of this reminds me of one of the metaphors that I always think about when I think about Parkinson's, is just this idea of a water table. And we are always, you get this diagnosis, and you're going to have those moments you're always going to have the moments where you go down the rabbit hole, or you need to lie in bed and be sad, or you need to grieve something. But to have those practices that you both are talking about, that you're doing exercise, that you're getting with your community, that on the good days you're making choices that are going to improve your life on that day. And that's the very best thing you can do. And all of this is just to get this water table at a higher level, so that when the shit hits the fan on any given day, you're starting from a higher place. You're not already depleted. You're not already dehydrated. You've got some water in that table, and you can refill it. And so all of these things that you're talking about, whether it's retraining your brain, finding people that you love, finding people that understand you, getting the education you need, the care team, these are all goals that will help you keep that water table high.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thank you, Mel. I love that analogy. I think,
go ahead.
I was just going to say too, the pandemic was a great time to be testing some of these theories for us, and sadly, and in a good way, right? So if one has to have a pandemic, how propitious, again, it is that we are trying to write a book on how to be well, even with challenges. So it helped to have a framework for me to go back to. And I remember some of our friends, even that I had been in our focus groups, are like, yeah, that makes sense. That works. So that was nice to hear. So anyway, go ahead. I'll let you jump.
I forgot what I was going to say. It's no big deal.
I'm sorry.
That's easy. It's easy to do, right? What were some of the, like, I know, getting rid of all of your stuff and going on the road, and that is a big move, right? What was the decision? What came, what led up to that? And what are the downstream impacts of that are helping you work better? And did it do what you thought it was going to do?
It's a great question. When we're talking about neuroplasticity and challenging your brain, I will tell you that selling everything you own is a challenge. And we did it very intentionally. We did it over a year's time. And I do not miss my things. There have been maybe one or two clothing items that I wished I would have held on to, um, predominantly because it's a little cooler down in Southern California this year than
Sure.
was,
Mm.
who knew, weather, right? Um, um, but that was a real process in letting go. And there was some grief around, like we had our last Christmas as a family in the house that we had been in for um, almost 18 years. And, but only moments of it, even for the kids. The house was very, very empty when the children left, and very big. And more than I wanted to maintain or my husband wanted to maintain. Nancy and I both owned houses about the same age that are over 100 years old. Um, and I, it was a process in letting go. And I was amazed at what I got rid of. We have no furniture. We didn't save any furniture. We have about 20 boxes of memorabilia. We took pictures out of frames. So we got rid of frames, but stacked pictures. So we have a lot of photographs and a lot of sketchbooks. My husband and I both keep sketchbooks. And that's being stored. And moving into a small space has been great. It's been, I will say that using all of that brain to do all those things takes energy, though. And I think that for any of us, not just for me, but also for my husband, challenging ourselves has been really wonderful. We love living in a small space. We have a 27-foot Airstream, and everything has its place. I love that it's very clean. You can't tell from behind me because my internet's not great where we're parked right now. I'm at a friend's house, but it's very clean lines, very simple. And I love that. It takes energy to plan trips, to see things, to go out and do things. And we're doing it now, Mel, because none of us are guaranteed a tomorrow, right? And it's something that we've dreamed of doing, talked about doing, and decided, hey, we can do this. And I will tell you, financially, if we could figure out how to make it work on a disability income and a husband retiring early, anybody can figure it out. It's doable if you want to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to do it. I think I will want to live in a house again. I don't know when. I know that for at least the next full year, we have plans, and we love we call it the silver spud. And when it's really hot, we call it the baked potato.
No.
The tater tot.
The tater tot.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Nancy, what about you? Or some real big decisions that you made that have since your diagnosis?
Yeah, I worked at the downtown library as a reference librarian, and I loved my work. You know, it was the best possible work for me. But during the pandemic, they had to close a lot of the rooms, and there just wasn't that many people. So I took an early retirement, and so now I'm rephrasing what retirement means for me. And it's been a process to figure out, who am I if I'm not going to work every day, and what do I want to do next? So
what are some of those things?
I'm trying to come up with different words for retirement. Like, I'm starting
Act 2. We're trying to call it Act 2. Even my husband is calling it Act 2.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I've never been artistic I've never done anything like that. And I started about maybe 2 years ago doing watercolors. And I'm also a bird watcher. So I've been painting lots of birds.
And painting them beautifully, I might add.
Thank you.
Really beautiful work Nancy does.
And then I'm also interested in historical research and also genetic DNA, and how that plays into the stories that our family told us and the stories our DNA tells us now. So I'm looking into lots of that. And I get to see Kat when she comes into town. She's, has appointments that she needs to keep sometimes here, or different things going on. And then we can also keep track of each other online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I miss her. I miss her in person, and I don't get to see her to exercise, but I get to connect with her when I need to.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening now and in the future, what do you want people to know? That people who are living with Parkinson's, maybe they were, recently diagnosed, and they are, what in the world is going on? What am I going to do? What is your advice?
I would say, first off, it's feel what you feel all the feels, and give yourself some grace around those feelings. And then when you're ready, find people. And if you don't like your people and your people aren't supportive, expand your look. Find a group. There's online groups. One of the things COVID did teach us was that we can reach out into people's homes in smaller places, and there are Facebook groups. There's all kinds of groups. And it doesn't have to be Parkinson's people. Maybe you want to find an exercise group that's not Parkinson's related, or volunteer, be of service, get outside your own self and help others. That's helped me enormously, going from a busy nurse midwife to how can I be of service still and have Parkinson's. So what would you say, Nance? Sorry if I stole your line.
No, I was thinking that I spent a year or two not telling people that I had a diagnosis, because I felt private about it, and I felt like I would be judged, or that it would be painful to let people know. And I hadn't really come to grips with things. But, I had Kat in my corner, and she kept saying, it's going to be okay. You can tell people. And when I did start telling people, I told my boss, and I told people, coworkers, to a person, they were really kind and non-judgmental and supportive. My boss said, what do you need? What can I do to help? I wasted a lot of energy hiding something that didn't need to be hidden. And I know people do need to hide for lots of reasons, but for me, when I quit hiding was when I was really able to start dealing with it.
Yeah, that is great.
I also want to give a little shout out here to Mel and to everybody at the Davis Phinney Foundation. I found the Davis Phinney Foundation because I was invited to give an opening talk in Portland. Yes. And prior to that, I had not met or learned about the organization. Their Living Well Today message has resonated so well with my personal philosophy that it has really helped me also to find a place to look for information that I know works for me and my style. And I'm so grateful for the work they do. I'm so grateful to the World Parkinson Congress and for introducing us to the international community and giving us a place to test the waters and be heard, and to meet people across the world that are living like us. So there will be a conference this summer in July of 2023 in Barcelona. And our book hopefully will be in the book nook there. We've applied, and I'll be giving a couple of talks and narrating or moderating a couple of discussions. So anyway, it's a little pitch, but it is a way to find your people. And there are scholarships available too, and travel grants. So don't let money be the barrier. You can get creative. That's one of the things I might say too. Do I have time, Mel?
Oh yeah.
That I was very certain that Ken and I, in our retirement, were not going to be able to travel. We were not going to be able to do the things we thought that we wanted to do, because financially we were not ready for me to leave. I was the primary breadwinner, and we had 2 to 3 kids in college. We still have one in college. It's been kind of a long haul, that part. Well, but I was really worried that we weren't going to be able to do those things. And I think there are creative ways to get anything accomplished if you want to. We have done a lot of home exchange stuff. Now we don't have a home to exchange, but I still have some points left over back when I had a home. So I think that
you wore the same, didn't you wear the same dress for a year?
I wore the same dress. This is it, actually.
Oh, I was going to say, that looks super familiar. I didn't know it was the same.
I was
right?
100 days.
I wore
100
the same
days.
dress for 100 days, and I did wash it, just for the record. It's
Yeah.
a 100-day wool dress, but it travels well. It's lightweight. It's antimicrobial.
Wrinkle-free.
Yes. Yeah. This was before the Airstream travel, but even before Parkinson's, I'd do stuff like that. Like I did a whole year of not buying anything new, nothing. So I loaded up on new underwear before my year. And then there's ways we can get creative.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably way more information than you ever wanted about me
No. I don't think it's possible to have enough, Kat. So
Oh,
I'm just hope that more stuff comes out, for the next decades that I know you. So
no, thank you.
Great.
Nance and I want to keep working together, and it's just, I want to keep working with Davis Phinney Foundation, and so glad you're back, Mel. So
thanks.
And Nance, it's so good to see your face. Nancy and I aren't breaking up just because I'm on the road. I want people to know that.
No way.
It's a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes the ties that much fonder, right?
There's got to be a sequel in the works too. So, we're waiting for it. Who knows?
There's some outlines going on.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad all the internet stuff worked out and we could have this chat.
Yeah.
And we're going to have our Living with Parkinson's meetup. It happens every Thursday afternoon at 1:00 Mountain Time. So if you're watching this, please join us for that. And we'll have you guys back again soon. Thank you so much.
I'll try to not have the same dress on.
Okay. You might. You don't know. It was great meeting you, Nancy.
You too, Mel. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.